Let me ask you a simple question. Is the project done when the last cable is terminated and tested? Is the project done when the crew leaves the site for the final time? Don't answer just yet.
Don't hang up that phone. We've found what you're looking for. Welcome to the Let's Talk Cabling podcast with Chuck Bowser, RCDD. Well, seeing how we're pulling Category 6A, the most powerful twisted pair in the world, you gotta ask yourself this one question. Did I pull 295 or 300 feet? Well, do you feel lucky? Do you, punk? In this podcast, you'll learn the differences between a 66 and 110 punch tool, the proper way to install a support cable, along with testing and certifying the cable. What exactly does RCDD stand for? Registered Communications Distribution Designer. Just the expert you need to ensure your cable plant performs exactly as designed. The elite professional, knowledgeable, and experienced in leading-edge ICT design principles. So join us as we talk about the ever-changing world of telecommunications. From ISP to OSP, from copper to fiber, design to installation. Now, send the new guy to the truck for a bucket of dial tone and the cable stretchers, while you listen to an informative program on telecommunications.
Welcome to the fourth installment of the Project Management Series. Today's show, we're continuing our 5-part Project Management Series. Previously, we talked about execution, monitoring, controlling, initiation. Today, we're talking about the project closure phase, and we're going to give you 5 tips to help better your chances in closing your projects smoothly. Welcome to the show where we tackle questions that are submitted by installers, project managers, estimators, IT personnel, and people just like you. On this show, we connect at the human level so we can connect the world. If you're watching this on YouTube, would you mind hitting the subscribe button and the bell button to be notified every time we publish a new episode? If you're listening to this in a podcast, would you mind giving us a rating? Preferably 5 stars if you can. If you don't, shoot me a message. Those 2 simple steps helps us beat the algorithm to get this message out so more people can get this message. Let's make the ICT industry better. Also, make sure to join us live after hours on our multi-stream broadcast where we answer your questions by an RCDD live on YouTube and LinkedIn every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. How do you get your questions to me? That's simple. You can direct message me on LinkedIn, you can use the comment section on our webpage, or you can even email me at questions@letstalkcabling.com. By the way, questions that are submitted in advance get preference. They get answered first. And finally, while we provide this content free of charge, and it always will be provided free of charge, if you find value in this content, would you like to support this channel? Please go by our Patreon page. If you want to find us, fire up the old Google machine and type in Let's Talk Cabling and Patreon. You will find it. By selecting up to one of our level of platforms, you'll get additional information that's not given to our regular audience members. You'll be able to do live Q&A, you'll get a Patreon shout out, and there's other special content that's only for those who support the platform. But again, these podcasts and these vlogs will always be free. Now let's get on with today's episode, the project closure of the project lifecycle. Last week, like I just mentioned, we discussed project execution and controlling, where we talked about earned value analysis. And that just reminds me, I need to do an episode on just that. If you have not heard of those, make sure you go back to that podcast and download that episode and listen to it. Lots of great content there. One of the biggest difference between a real project manager and someone who only holds the title of project manager is how the project is closed out. I mentioned this in previous shows that in our industry, the ICT industry, many project managers are really nothing but glorified project foremen or lead technicians. There's nothing wrong with that. They're good people, but they're geared towards one thing. Project managers are geared towards something else. They're really not functioning as a project manager. Heck, even I was one of those. For my first 2 years as a project manager, that's all I did was run crews, but I had the title project manager. I had no idea what a labor budget was, what a material budget was, scheduling, Gantt charts. I didn't even know what that stuff was because, again, I wasn't really a real project manager. As a project manager, this is when you can't take your eye off the goal. There are some distinct attributes that you need to make sure that's going to happen during the project closeout phase, that you need to make sure that you address each one of these and that you do your due diligence. And these 5 things are: number 1, getting the customer to agree that the project is over and obtaining their acceptance in writing. Very critical. The second thing is closing the contract. It's more than just signing the contract. Step 3, you want to document the lessons learned from that project. Step 4, archiving the project information. And step 5, helping the team transition to the next cable project. So those 5 things are all going to happen during the project closure phase. So let's look at each one of those 5 things and what the pitfalls are that you got to watch out for, and some of the things that you can expect to happen. The first one was getting the customer to agree that the project is over. I know you probably think, well, that's simple, Chuck. I just walk in and tell them it's done. No, it's more than that. And this is critical because usually the final payment may be linked to any or all of several deliverables. Typical deliverables that you're going to be asked to provide to a customer in most ICT projects include red lines, test results, as-built, warranty paperwork from the manufacturer, and in some cases, especially with like federal government jobs with prevailing wage stuff in the contract, you might ask to provide certified payroll and other stuff as well. Those are all deliverables because you are delivering them to the customer. But typically, though, before you're going to be delivering those documents to the customer, there is one thing that you want to do first, and it's called a final walkthrough with the customer. On the walkthrough, you want to make sure to walk the entire job with the customer. Literally, look at every jack, every rack, every patch panel, every telecom room, every equipment room, every facet of the job. As you're walking through the job, have the customer note if there's something that's unsatisfactory. If there's an issue, and there's only just a few issues, then you might want to just go ahead and fix them right then and there. But if it's starting getting a lot, then you're going to want to document that situation or those issues. You may even want to offer to supply a ladder so the customer can literally climb the ladder and look in the ceiling so they can inspect the fire stops, especially for like hospitals, because they are really critical on fire stops. They also may want to look at cable supports and how the cable was supported. I have yet to do a project where a customer did not find at least something wrong with the project. Sometimes it's minor, as like just fingerprints on a wall that's easy to fix, or it could be something major, like a rack not mounted in the right spot, or a faceplate mounted on the wrong wall. You want to find those out during the initial final walkthrough. Again, like I said, depending on the number and the severity of the items that you find, if they're small and not that major, then again, take care of them right there as you're doing this walkthrough with the customer. If they seem to be picky, if the customer seems to be picky and starts creating a lot of stuff, then you want to create what's called a punch list. A punch list is just a list of items that need to be repaired before the project is done. Pro tip number 1 for the day. Do not let this walkthrough be the first time that you walk that entire project. As a project manager, you want to make sure that you walk the entire project before you walk the customer through there. Right? Do your own final walkthrough and then fix any issues you find with your own walkthrough. Again, the reason you want to do this is because if you can eliminate all those issues, when you do your final walkthrough with the customer, it will go a lot smoother. Yes, it's going to take some of your valuable time, but it's going to do 2 things for you. 1, it's going to make the customer walkthrough, the final walkthrough, go smoother, and it's going to help build customer confidence because they just all this walkthrough with you and they couldn't find anything wrong with the job. Now, getting back to our walkthrough with the customer. If it's a walkthrough where you documented everything on a punch list, after you've done that walk list, you go back to the office, create a formal punch list. Create a Microsoft Word document or a PDF document with a list showing all the items that the customer identified that need to be fixed or repaired. All right? And then when you create that list, put a spot next to each thing so there's a spot where you can put a check for when it is fixed. At the bottom of that punch list, make sure you put spaces for you to sign, the customer to sign, and the date, the authorized point of contact, to be exact, to sign that. Then after the walkthrough, when the customer identifies it, fix all the items on the list to make sure that they're complete. And then schedule, again, another final walkthrough with the customer. Hopefully this one is the true final walkthrough. Try to limit the walkthrough to just the items that were on the repair list. Once a customer agrees to both, that everything's been fixed, then both of you should sign the form and date it, and make sure that you scan that document and send that copy to the customer. Pro tip number 2 for the day. Be aware of any pressures that your point of contact may be under. What I mean by that is, I've had several projects that when I did the final walkthrough with the customer, they would keep adding things to the punch list. And I remember at the time that they always seemed very minor stuff. And I found out the only reason they were adding those things is because they were trying to delay the final payment, which is hinged to the project closure. They want the project to be paid for maybe in a different fiscal quarter or a different fiscal year to help maybe their budgets. Well, guess what? That doesn't help your budget when you're trying to get the project done within that fiscal quarter or that fiscal year so you can claim that revenue with your company. So be aware that those kinds of things do happen with customers. That's why it's always good to have a good working relationship with your customer and to know your customer inside and out. Now let's talk a minute now about those deliverables. You can work on them before the final walkthrough. As a matter of fact, it's good to have them done before the walkthrough. You may have to make some final changes, but have them done before the actual walkthrough. Now, I find it best to have them done as much before that final walkthrough, and the reason for that is that way if the walkthrough is done and all of the things that were found that need to be repaired, it's just a few minor changes to that to your deliverables, and then you can hand the deliverables to the customer right then and there at that final walkthrough. The most common thing that's asked for with deliverables are test results. Now, I've had customers request test results in several different manners. I've had some customers ask for them to be printed out and placed in 3-ring binders so they can place it on a shelf somewhere and then never look at, touch, or even think about them ever again. So like I said, they're not used that often when they're done that way. I've had other customers who only wanted them in electronic copies. Now, they may not have had the native software that came from the testers. They want them in PDF formats. The contract hopefully will delineate any of those requirements. And if the contract does not, then you need to make sure that you contact and have a discussion with that customer in advance and make sure that the both of you come to a mutual agreement on what will be provided for as far as test results prior to the final deliverables. Again, make sure that you document that conversation as well. Make sure that you are also aware of the requirement before the delivery. You may also want to be asked to deliver things called red lines, as-builts, or some other type of documentation. Now, they're all simple documents. A red line is just a floor plan. And on that floor plan, it shows the cable path, usually indicated by the color red. That's why they're called red lines. They show the actual routing of the cable in the ceiling. That way, if another trade has to do work in the ceiling, the customer can show them prints, and that trade can avoid your cables. As-builts include showing the different types of faceplates used on the project, the different types. So you might have duplex faceplates, quad faceplates. It might show the rack layouts. They might even ask for cross-connect sheets. Again, these all should be computer generated either via a spreadsheet, a Microsoft Word document where you create a table, or maybe even some CAD drawings. You are a professional. Look the part. Pro tip number 3. When you deliver those documents to the customer, the deliverables, make sure you go through each and every one of those deliverables with the customer. Don't just drop them off with the receptionist. There's nothing wrong with receptionists, okay? But you want to make sure that you go through the documentation so the customer is satisfied. And most importantly, make sure that you get the customer's signature that they were delivered. Now, the document which lists all of those items that you're delivering that on the deliverables, make sure it has a list that says everything, the test results, the red lines, the as-builts, cross-connect sheets, and then there's a spot at the bottom where everybody signs it. That is another bottleneck that a project manager faces when trying to get approval for their retainage, also known as the final payment, also known as the profit of the job, because that's usually that last 10%, which is the profit. This will eliminate any holdup of payment because the customer has misplaced the deliverables, misplaced the test results, even though you know you delivered them. If you didn't document it, it didn't happen. That's why, again, you want to make sure that you have them sign that form that they received those documents. On a side note to deliverables, if the customer wants a manufacturer's warranty as part of the deliverable process, make sure that those test results are acceptable to the manufacturers. The manufacturers are going to be more stringent on what's allowed in the test results than the customer may allow. For example, a customer might not care about star test results. Manufacturers will. And number two, if it's required that the technicians are to be certified to be able to work on that project, make sure that those certifications are done before the project starts, because they're going to want that documentation with the deliverables. And number three, try to get the manufacturer to send the warranty, the final warranty document, to you. That way you can deliver it. Anytime you can get in front of a customer, it is a chance for you to build on that relationship with the customer. So the second item was closing the contract. One could argue that giving the customer the deliverables is indeed closing the contracts, and they wouldn't be necessarily wrong. But there may be other things that the customer wanted to have in order to close out that contract. Some of the things that they may want as well, they might want you to provide, for example, post-cutover support. That way for the first 24 hours, so that if anything goes wrong, there's a technician on site. They may ask you to provide training for the new voicemail system that you installed, that new security system. Or they might want to have you teach the customer staff on how to use the cable plant, how to activate new drops. Right? Those are things that may be added as part of the contract, and you can't close it out until all those things are done. The customer may even ask you to have a final closeout meeting with them where they might do their own lessons learned. Or they might even have a commissioning ceremony where the customer literally signs the contract or the document that transitions the ownership from you, the ICT contractor, to them, the customer. Now, the key to success here is to know what is required in the contract and fulfilling said contract. So if nothing else, if you learn from today's show, read the contract twice, 3 times, 4 times. Be familiar with that contract. The third step is having some kind of a lessons learned process. What this looks like will be determined by the size of the company, the size of the project, the number of project managers, and let's be honest, how good of a project management office or project management program that company has. Now, the process should start off with, at minimum, by the project manager completing a lessons learned check sheet. This pre-made form basically should have everything that somebody who looks at this document should get a good feel for that document. It should have the customer's name, the customer's address, the number of voice cables you installed, the number of data cables you installed, how much and what kind of backbone cable was installed. Was it copper? Was it fiber? What was it terminated with? How many floors did they represent? How many telecom rooms are in the project? What other ancillary systems were installed for the project? I mentioned voicemail systems, telephone systems. Did you actually put in the computers? You need to have, again, enough information so anybody who's not familiar with the project, when they look at that lessons learned sheet, the top portion of it, they would have a good understanding of the size and the scope of that actual project. Now, on that document, there are some other sections that are going to need to be filled out as well, right? This document should be used to identify, document, and analyze all facets of the project. The next 3 sections that I was just alluding to will answer the following questions. Now, when you answer these questions, it is critical that you are open and honest with these questions. These questions are: what went right with the project? What went wrong with this project? What needs to be improved? we learn from making mistakes. Every project manager makes mistakes, and hopefully we learn from those mistakes. So again, make sure you answer those questions completely, openly, and honestly. Pro tip number 4. Now this pro tip is specifically to the supervisor of those project managers, or maybe the person who's running the project management office or the area manager. Do not use that form to discipline or terminate the project manager. Realize that true learning comes from making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. Rather, use this tool as a way to identify training that maybe you might need, or your project management staff might need, or the support staff might need, or changes that you might need to have in the processes that might be bridling your project managers. Is it a logistics issue? Is it a warehouse issue, not getting materials? Is it a tool sign-out issue? If you use that form in a negative manner, all your project managers will learn that it's only going to be used to browbeat them. And trust me, they will no longer be open and honest with the faults. And again, you're not going to improve your project manager's performance, all of your project manager's performance, if they're all putting down just rosy stuff on that lessons learned things. And they will all learn from each other's mistakes. One of the companies that I worked for really excelled at this. Not only did they require each project manager to complete a lessons learned form on all their projects, but they also held quarterly meetings with all the project managers. They would bring them in for lunch one day, we'd sit down, we'd have a nice lunch, and then each project manager had to discuss 2 of their projects. One of the projects would be the best project that they did that went flawlessly and there was no issues. The other project, as you probably already figured out, was the worst project. Now again, the intent here is that other project managers might incur similar issues with a future project that they may be doing. And when they hear how you handled it, or they're together as a group discussion, you might come together as a group and say, here's how you handled it, but this is actually a better way to handle that next time. That way, all your project managers are training each other. And all it's going to really cost you as a project management official or an area manager is the cost of lunch and some time. That same company would also hold yearly meetings. Each area manager of an office, once a year, they would all come together and they would sit down and they would meet for about 2 to 3 days. Now, they would discuss lots of topics like the future of the business and stuff like that. But every time they had one of these meetings yearly, they would dedicate a portion of the time, and each area manager had to discuss 2 projects from their office. Have you guessed which 2 projects they're discussing? Yes. Again, one from the best project, one from the worst project. That way, all the area managers can learn from the particular pains that that area manager had to endure. And then again, they can analyze those issues and maybe come up with future processes that might eliminate those issues in the future. Now, the 4th step is archiving the information. Paperwork is one of our weaknesses as ICT project managers. We are wired to build stuff, to solve issues, to make sure that the customer's happy. To quote a Clint Eastwood movie, we are high speed, low drag. We don't like doing paperwork. Never have, and there are very few. I'd be kind of leery of a project manager that does like doing paperwork. With that being said, though, it is a challenge to archive all ICT projects because you have all different kinds of stuff that needs to be filed. You're going to have printed invoices, bill of materials, printed packing slips, timesheets. They're all in paper form. Then you have electronic documents like test results, emails. Then you have other paper things that need to be archived as well, like blueprints. And typically, you can't just put a set of blueprints in a file folder. Well, usually you can't. So setting up a good foundation will help cure some of those issues. Things such as storing all the information in a central repository. Right? Having all the project files in one central location after the project closes. Also, having a documented electronic file storage process and the ability to store those blueprints are going to help a lot. So during the project, the project manager is going to want to keep that file really close to them, i.e. in their desk or maybe in their truck, right? Because they're always going to be adding material to that project file. They're going to be referring to it to look at the bill of materials, to refresh their mind on the contract, and stuff like that. They're always going to be looking at that thing constantly. And once the project is done and closed, all those closed projects should be stored, like I said, in a central repository. That way, if anybody needs to refer to some information out of a closed project, you don't have to first, A, remember who was the project manager that ran that job? B, does that project manager still even work for the company? Right? C, what is their storing system? Is it in their desk? Is their desk locked? Is their storing system in a plastic case in their truck? And are they keeping the project files from all the projects that they ever had? If it's stored in their desk, who has the keys to their desk? As I said, electronic files are another challenge. In my role in this industry now, I deal with people at all levels of the ICT industry. And it always amazes me how many people in our industry lack basic computer skills. And what I mean by that is, a while back, we switched over to electronic sign-in sheets for the classes. And you'd be surprised how many times I've seen people typing their name or their email address in with literally 2 fingers. We are in the computer industry. We're in the IT industry. You should know how to operate a computer. Now, getting back to our electronic files. Having a system set up beforehand and teach all the project managers on that system, right? There's a difference between teaching and training. I'm doing a future show on that, so make sure you stay tuned. I have seen systems set up by the year, by the project name, by the customer's name, even by the project manager. You got to figure out what system works best for you, because everybody's brain's wired a little differently. But the key is, once you come up with that system, everybody follows that system. That way it makes it easier to find that information quickly and easily. That's going to help you tremendously. Pro tip number 5. Store all those electronic files centrally on a server. Now, first, most servers have some sort of backups utility on them, meaning they're getting backed up, and then if the server crashes, or like we had an event one time at an office where a hot water heater exploded and doused the server, right? Well, there's a backup copy of all the project files if it's stored on the server. If those information is just stored on the project manager's laptop, and let's just say the laptop, it crashes, because laptops get dropped, they get stolen, all kinds of things happen to them. How much time will it take to retrieve or recreate that information that was on that broken laptop? Remember this: time equals money. Also, if they're stored on the project manager's laptop, what are you going to do if that project manager is out on the job site somewhere and you need to review some project documentation and he has his laptop with him, or she has her laptop with her? And finally, the fifth step is helping the project team transition to the next cable project. Now, in the ICT industry, there's a project psychology that happens, that every project manager has to be able to identify and address if necessary. As the project nears completion, some of the team members are going to become anxious because they're going to not understand that there's another project for them afterwards. They're going to start worrying about whether or not they're going to get laid off or have a job. How will they feed their kids? How will they make their car payment or their house payment? Are they going to be fired? This all kinds of build up anxiety and makes them very anxious. As a project manager, you need to make sure that you keep your team informed of where they will be going next. I've actually had project teams slow their production down during the last third of the project because they didn't know where they were going to be going next. They didn't know if there was a project or not. Now, this phenomenon happens more with companies that utilize people from the union in those parts of the country. I have nothing against union companies. I used to work for one for many years. There are lots of benefits to working with union employees. But generally, they're going to pull people from the bench to fill up a project. And when the project's done, they send them people back to the bench because they don't have another project for them. Now, on the flip side, if the employee or the technician is a member of the company, then you don't have to worry about that. Now, on the flip side, never lie to your crew by telling them there's going to be something afterwards if there isn't. you're going to lose credibility with the team members, and they're never going to trust anything you say ever again. If you don't know where they're going to go, be upfront and honest with them. If you do know where they're going next, help them prepare for that change. Were they going to be working with you or a new project manager? Are they going to be working different hours? Are they going to be working second shift or third shift? What is the contact information for that new project manager if it's going to be a new one? What is the preferred method for communications? Emails, text messages? How is that project manager's managing style different from yours? Will there be some new skills that technician is going to have to learn to be able to work on that new project? That new project might require a whole bunch of fiber termination, and this technician doesn't know how to terminate fiber yet. Will the next project require some type of a security clearance or some type of documentation just in order to get access to the facility? You see that a lot in government jobs. As a project manager, you should invest some of your time on the next project, even if it's not your project. You heard me right. The byproduct of doing this is going to give you a crew that's going to work better for you because they know you have their back. You're also going to have a grateful project manager who's going to be very appreciative of the fact that you helped get the crew set up for their project. And you never know. In turn, they may help you by setting up their crew when they come back to work on a project for yours in the future. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's show. We did cover a plethora of information today. Now, I would be interested in hearing from each and every one of you guys. What's your opinion on some of the things that you've done as a project manager that helped make your projects go smoothly? What are some of the challenges that you had to overcome? Let's do our own lessons learned in the comment section below if this is on YouTube, or shoot me a message, if it's via podcast. And let's have a lessons learned and become better. You can direct message me on LinkedIn. You can put a comment, like I said, on the podcast, or just send me an email, chuck@letstalkcabling.com. Now, I do read every post. I may not necessarily answer every post, but I definitely read every post. So until next time, stay safe.
That's it for this episode of today's podcast. We hope you were able to learn something. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. Also, leave a rating so we can help even more people learn about telecommunications. Until next time, be safe.